This is Dave. My wife's father introduced the man at Christmas dinner. He'll be perfect for my daughter after the divorce. I buttered my roll calmly. How nice. Dave, did they mention the house is in my name in the prenup? My wife choked on her wine. You know what they say about the best laid plans? Well, apparently my wife Sarah never got that memo because here I am, Marcus, standing in my own damn kitchen at 6 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day, wrestling with a 20-pound turkey like I'm some kind of culinary gladiator. The irony isn't lost on me. I'm busting my ass to make this dinner perfect, while the woman who's supposed to be my partner in life is probably still dead to the world upstairs, dreaming about whatever the hell it is that occupies her mind these days. Spoiler alert, it sure as isn't me. I've been up since dawn. And let me tell you, prepping a turkey is like performing surgery on a dead bird while questioning every life choice that led you to this moment. The stuffing made from scratch using my grandmother's recipe that she passed down to me. Not Sarah, mind you, because apparently cooking is my thing now. When did that happen? When did I become the domestic goddess in this relationship? While my wife turned into some kind of phone-obsessed zombie who treats our marriage like a really boring Netflix series she's only half watching. The house smells like sage and regret, which is pretty much the perfect combination for a holiday that's supposed to be about gratitude and family togetherness. I'm seasoning this bird with enough herbs to make Gordon Ramsay weep with joy, all while Sarah's upstairs doing God knows what. Probably texting her sister Olivia about how exhausting it must be to have a husband who actually gives a damn about making holidays special. The woman could burn water, but somehow I'm the problem for wanting our Christmas dinner to be more than takeout Chinese food and passive-aggressive silence. By 10 a.m., I'm knee-deep inside dishes that would make Martha Stewart jealous. Mashed potatoes from actual potatoes. Revolutionary concept, I know. Green bean casserole that doesn't come from a Campbell's soup can. Cranberry sauce that's never seen the inside of a can-shaped mold. Meanwhile, Sarah finally graces me with her presence around 11, stumbling into the kitchen like she's doing me some kind of massive favor by existing in the same zip code as the stove. Morning, honey, she mumbles, not looking up from her phone. Not, thank you for doing all this work. Not, wow, everything smells amazing. Just a half-hearted greeting that sounds about as enthusiastic as a tax audit. She's already back to tapping away at her screen like she's conducting the New York Philharmonic through text messages. I want to ask her what's so damn important that it can't wait until after Christmas dinner, but I already know the answer would be some about staying connected or work stuff that somehow never seems to involve actual work. The real fun starts around 3 when her parents show up. Richard and Eleanor sweep into my house like they own the place, which is rich considering they've never contributed so much as a dinner roll to any family gathering. Richard's got that entitled swagger that screams, I peaked in the 80s and never got the memo. While Eleanor's wearing enough jewelry to fund a small country's defense budget, they immediately start critiquing everything. The temperature of the house, the music I've chosen, the way I've arranged the furniture. It's like having a pair of discount wedding planners show up to tell you your own party sucks. Then comes Olivia, Sarah's sister, who's perfected the art of making every conversation about herself while somehow managing to insult everyone else in the room. She's got this talent for backhanded compliments that would make a Southern belle jealous. Oh, Marcus, you've really outdone yourself this year, she says in a tone that clearly implies I'm some kind of performing monkey who's finally learned a new trick. Thanks, Olivia. Your enthusiasm is truly overwhelming. But here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean completely up. Around 4:30, just as I'm pulling the turkey out of the oven like some kind of domestic god, the doorbell rings. Sarah jumps up with suspicious enthusiasm, practically bouncing to the door like she's expecting Publishers Clearinghouse to show up with an oversized check. Instead, she comes back with Dave. Dave is everything you'd expect from a guy named Dave who shows up uninvited to someone else's Christmas dinner. Tall, stupidly handsome in that generic Ken doll way, wearing a sweater that probably costs more than most people's rent. He's got that practice smile that screams, I sell insurance, but pretend it's a calling. And he's carrying a bottle of wine that I guarantee he picked up at the grocery store on his way over. Probably still has the price tag if you look hard enough. Richard lights up like a Christmas tree when he sees this guy practically falling over himself to make introductions. Marcus, meet Dave. Dave, this is Marcus, Sarah's husband. The way he says husband makes it sound like a temporary job title, like I'm the substitute teacher who's been filling in until the real educator shows up. Eleanor is practically glowing, giving Dave the kind of warm welcome she's never once given me in 15 years of marriage. That's when Richard drops the bomb that makes everything crystal clear. Dave here is the perfect man for Sarah after the divorce. The words hang in the air like a toxic cloud. And suddenly, every weird conversation, every hushed phone call, every girls' night out that lasted until 3 a.m. starts making perfect sense. This wasn't a Christmas dinner. It was an audition. They'd brought in my replacement and expected me to sit there and smile while they sized him up like I was already dead and buried. The silence that follows is the kind you hear right before a tornado hits. Dave standing there looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else on earth, including a root canal appointment or a timeshare presentation. Sarah's gone whiter than the damn tablecloth. And for once in her life, she's not looking at her phone. Even Olivia's managed to shut her mouth, which might be the first Christmas miracle of the day. So, what do? I butter my roll slowly, deliberately, like I'm performing some kind of sacred ritual. The butter melts perfectly across the warm bread, and I take my sweet time spreading it to every corner. Then I look up at this room full of people who apparently think I'm some kind of idiot, and I smile. Not a mean smile, not an angry smile, just the kind of smile you give when someone's shown you exactly who they are and you're grateful for the clarity. How nice, I say, taking a bite of my perfectly buttered roll. Did they mention the house is in my name in the prenup? Sarah's wine glass starts trembling in her hand like she's developed some kind of neurological condition, and the color drains from her face so fast, I'm worried she might actually faint right into the mashed potatoes. Dave's looking around the room like he's trying to figure out if this is some kind of elaborate joke or if he's genuinely stepped into the middle of someone else's domestic nightmare. The turkey is getting cold, the stuffing's probably congealing, and my marriage is apparently over. But you know what? I've never felt more alive. This is what happens when you spend months thinking you're going crazy. Wondering why your wife's acting strange. Why her family's being even more condescending than usual. Why everyone keeps looking at you like you're the punchline to a joke you haven't heard yet. Turns out the joke was on them. They thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. But the truth is I've been playing a completely different game altogether. One where I actually read the rule book before I started playing. Eleanor's face absolutely lights up like she just won the lottery. And I swear to God, if she starts clapping her hands together like some demented fairy godmother, I might lose what's left of my Christmas spirit. She's practically bouncing in her chair, beaming at Dave like he's the second coming of Christ mixed with a lottery ticket and a perfect son-in-law all rolled into one designer sweater-wearing package. The woman's acting like she just successfully orchestrated the merger of 2 Fortune 500 companies instead of what she actually did, which is invite some random dude to crash my Christmas dinner so he can steal my wife. Oh, Dave, Eleanor gushes. And I can practically see the hearts floating around her head like she's a cartoon character who's fallen in love with the idea of being a matchmaker. You simply must tell Marcus about your work. Richard was just telling me about your success in finance. She says finance like it's some kind of magical word that's supposed to make me drop to my knees in worship. Lady, I've been running my own business since before your daughter learned how to balance a checkbook, which let's be honest, she still can't do without a calculator in 3 attempts. Richard jumps in like he's Dave's personal hype man. Practically doing everything short of pulling out pom-poms and leading a cheer. Dave here just made partner at Whitman & Associates, he announces, puffing up like a proud peacock, showing off feathers that aren't even his. One of the most prestigious firms in the city. His family has connections throughout the banking industry. The way he's talking, you'd think Dave personally invented money or discovered a new way to make rich people richer. Real Nobel Prize material. This guy. Dave's just standing there like a deer caught in headlights, probably wondering if he accidentally walked into some kind of reality show where the prize is a used wife and a heaping helping of family dysfunction. His nervous half-smile is doing that twitchy thing that happens when someone realizes they've stepped in something they can't easily scrape off their shoe. Poor bastard probably thought he was coming to a nice family dinner where he'd charm everyone with his wit and leave with a phone number. Instead, he's gotten front row seats to the Marcus and Sarah show, complete with live commentary from the world's worst Greek chorus. Richard's on a roll now, painting this picture of Dave like he's some kind of financial superhero. Good family, he keeps saying like that phrase means something more than white, wealthy, and willing to overlook the fact that his potential future wife is still technically married to someone else. He's going on about Dave's connections, his education, his bright future. And I'm sitting here thinking, dude, your bright future just walked into a house that belongs to the guy you're trying to replace. That's not strategic thinking. That's like showing up to a knife fight with a business card. Then comes the real kicker. Eleanor leans forward with this conspiratorial whisper that's about as subtle as a fire truck. Talking about the grandchildren Sarah deserves. Deserves. Like children are some kind of merit-based reward system. And Sarah's been racking up points by doing what exactly? Ignoring her current husband, spending my money, perfecting the art of being physically present but emotionally unavailable. If that's the criteria for deserving kids, then half the population should probably remain childless. Olivia is sitting there with this eating grin that makes me want to throw my dinner roll at her head. She's always been the family instigator, the one who stirs the pot and then acts innocent when everything boils over. She's loving every second of this, watching me squirm while her parents parade my replacement around like he's a prize bull at the county fair. Isn't Dave wonderful? She pipes up, batting her eyelashes like she's auditioning for a Disney movie about annoying sidekicks. So accomplished, so handsome. Sarah's so lucky to have met him. Met him, Not will meet him or might meet him someday. Met him past tense like it's already a done deal, like they've already written me out of the story and moved on to the sequel. Nobody asked for the casual way she says it is almost impressive. It takes real skill to be that blatantly obvious while pretending to be subtle. Dave's looking more uncomfortable by the minute, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like he's standing on hot coals. The guy's obviously got some brain cells left because he's starting to realize that this whole situation is more up than a soup sandwich. You can practically see the wheels turning in his head. Wait, did they invite me to dinner with her husband? Are they serious right now? What kind of family does this? Meanwhile, Sarah's trying to play it cool, but she's about as smooth as sandpaper on a sunburn. She keeps shooting these panicked looks at her parents like she's trying to telepathically tell them to shut the hell up and stop making this more obvious than it already is. But Eleanor and Richard are too caught up in their grand plan to notice that their daughter is slowly dying of embarrassment right there at the dinner table. I lean back in my chair, taking my sweet time with another bite of turkey, and decide it's time to drop some reality on this little fantasy they've constructed. You know, I say, keeping my voice conversational, like I'm commenting on the weather or the football scores. This is really interesting. All this talk about Sarah's future and what she deserves. I pause, letting the words hang there while I reach for the cranberry sauce. But here's the thing that's kind of funny. Well, funny to me anyway. This house we're sitting in, the one where you're all planning Sarah's bright new future, it's in my name. Inherited it from my grandmother before Sarah and I even met. The room goes quieter than a morgue at midnight. You could hear a pin drop, or in this case, you could hear Dave's confidence deflating like a punctured balloon. The guy starting to understand that the secure future Richard's been selling him comes with a few complications. Namely, that the security belongs to someone else entirely. But I'm not done yet. Oh no, we're just getting started. And that prenup Sarah signed. I continue spreading butter on another roll with the kind of deliberate precision that would make a surgeon jealous. The one she was so eager to sign because she was totally independent and didn't need my money. Yeah, that's still in effect. Ironclad, as they say in the legal business. I glance over at Dave, who's looking like he just realized he showed up to a poker game with Monopoly money. You probably understand contracts, right, Dave? Being in finance and all. The beautiful thing about truth is how it cuts through like a hot knife through butter. All their grand plans, all their smug assumptions about what they could get away with. All their careful orchestration of this little dinner theater, it all crumbles the moment reality enters the conversation. Sarah's sitting there looking like she's trying to solve advanced calculus in her head. Probably running through every possible scenario and realizing they all end with her getting exactly what she signed up for. Nothing. Dave clears his throat and you can tell he's trying to figure out how to gracefully extract himself from this cluster without looking like a complete. The poor guy probably thought he was walking into a simple family dinner where he'd charm the parents and ease his way into a relationship with a soon-to-be divorced woman. Instead, he's gotten a front row seat to the realization that the woman isn't actually divorced. The husband isn't going anywhere and the whole damn thing is more complicated than a Christopher Nolan movie. This is what happens when people assume they're smarter than everyone else in the room. They make plans based on what they want to be true instead of what actually is true. And then they act all shocked when reality shows up uninvited to their little fantasy dinner party. Now, here's where things get really fun. And by fun, I mean I'm about to watch a bunch of grown-ass adults realize they've been playing checkers while I've been playing chess this whole time. See, the beautiful thing about being underestimated is that people tend to run their mouths and show their cards way too early. They've been treating me like I'm some kind of clueless schmuck who doesn't know his wife's been shopping around for an upgrade. But plot twist, I've known exactly what's been going on, and I've been prepared for this conversation longer than they've been planning this little ambush. I set down my fork and lean forward. Not in an aggressive way, but in that calm, controlled manner that usually makes people nervous as hell. Let me explain how this works. I say, and my voice is so reasonable, it's almost scary. Since everyone seems a little confused about the financial situation here, I glance around the table, making eye contact with each of them like a teacher about to explain basic math to kindergartners who've been eating the crayons instead of using them. Everything Sarah and I own is separate. I continue taking another sip of wine like I'm discussing the weather forecast instead of dismantling their entire plan. My business shares, mine, this house. Mine. My grandmother's estate that came with some very nice properties upstate. Also mine. The investment portfolio that's been doing pretty damn well. Thank you very much. You guessed it. Mine. Each word lands like a hammer blow. And I can see Dave's face going through more changes than a traffic light during rush hour. Sarah tries to jump in with some weak-ass protest, but I hold up a hand like I'm directing traffic. Now, before anyone starts getting their panties in a twist about how unfair this all sounds, let me remind everyone of a little thing called personal choice. I lean back, getting comfortable, because this is the part where I really start enjoying myself. Sarah agreed to every single word of that prenup. In fact, she insisted on it. The look on Eleanor's face is priceless, like someone just told her that designer handbags are actually made by regular people who don't give a about status symbols. That's impossible, she sputters, because apparently the idea that her precious daughter might have made a decision without consulting the family council is more shocking than finding out Santa Claus is real and he's been embezzling from the North Pole. Oh, it's very possible, I say almost kindly, because there's nothing more devastating than gentle truth delivered with a smile. Sarah was very adamant about keeping our finances separate. Said it was important for her independence, her sense of self-worth. I don't want anyone thinking I married you for your money, Marcus. I quote, doing a pretty decent impression of Sarah's voice when she's trying to sound noble and self-sacrificing. Real progressive thinking, you know, very feminist of her. Richard's face is turning an interesting shade of red that suggests his blood pressure might be reaching dangerous levels. Surely something like that can be renegotiated, he huffs because apparently he thinks marriage contracts work like cell phone plans where you can just call customer service and upgrade your package. People change their minds about these things all the time. I have to laugh at that one. Not because it's funny, but because it's so beautifully naive. Not this one, Richard, I say, shaking my head like I'm genuinely sorry to disappoint him. This contract is what we in the business call airtight. Had it drawn up by the best lawyers money can buy. Cost me a pretty penny, but turns out it was worth every cent. I paused for dramatic effect because why rush a good moment? Funny thing about really good lawyers, they think of everything. Every loophole, every possible angle, every way someone might try to weasel out of what they signed. Dave's starting to look like he's doing complex math in his head, probably calculating exactly how much this whole situation is going to cost him in terms of emotional investment versus actual return. The guy's in finance, so he understands risk assessment. And right about now, he's realizing he's looking at a high-risk, low-reward scenario that any smart investor would run away from screaming. Olivia decides this is her moment to shine because she's never met an awkward situation she couldn't make worse. You're being cruel, Marcus, she says, putting on that sanctimonious tone she reserves for moments when she wants to sound morally superior while being a complete. Marriages are about compromise, about working together. You're absolutely right, Olivia. I agree, nodding like she's just shared the wisdom of the ages. Marriages are about working together. Which is why it's so interesting that Sarah worked together with all of you to plan this little dinner party without working with me on the minor detail of inviting her potential replacement to our house. I take another bite of turkey, chewing thoughtfully, but hey, I'm sure it just slipped her mind. You know how busy she gets with all that texting. Sarah finally finds her voice, though it comes out about as strong as watered-down coffee. Marcus, you're making this sound worse than it is, she says, trying to laugh it off, but the laugh sounds like it's been strangled halfway out of her throat. Dave's just a friend. A family friend. A family friend, I repeat, nodding sagely. Right. The kind of family friend who gets introduced as the perfect man for Sarah after the divorce by her father. That's some friendship, Sarah. Really deep stuff. I turn to Dave, who's looking like he'd rather be getting a root canal from a blindfolded dentist. Dave, buddy, did you know you were just a friend? Because the way Richard introduced you made it sound like you were auditioning for a very specific role in Sarah's post-divorce life. Dave opens his mouth, probably to say something diplomatic and lawyer. Why, but nothing comes out. Smart man. Sometimes silence is the best policy when you're standing in the middle of someone else's marriage exploding in real time. Richard's getting that particular shade of purple that suggests he's either about to have a stroke or start yelling, possibly both. Now see here, Marcus, he begins because apparently he thinks this is some kind of business negotiation where he can intimidate me into accepting whatever deal they've cooked up. There's no need to be difficult about this. We're all adults here. You're absolutely right, Richard. I agree. Raising my wine glass in a mock toast. We are all adults, which is why I'm sure everyone will understand when I point out that adults are responsible for the consequences of their choices. I take a sip, savoring both the wine and the moment. And Sarah made her choices very clear when she signed that prenup. Very adult of her. Really, very responsible. The thing about Eleanor is that she's spent so many years manipulating situations from behind the scenes that she's forgotten how to handle it when someone refuses to play by her rules. She's used to people folding when she applies pressure, used to getting her way through sheer force of entitled personality. But here's the thing about being genuinely prepared for a situation. It makes you bulletproof against other people's. This is preposterous. Eleanor declares like she's the Queen of England. And I've just suggested we start serving tea in coffee mugs. Sarah deserves better than this. She deserves a man who appreciates her, who can provide for her properly. The implication being, of course, that I'm neither appreciative nor capable of provision, which is rich coming from a woman whose idea of contribution to society is organizing charity galas where other people donate money so she can take credit for the fundraising. Better than what exactly? I ask, genuinely curious. Better than a husband who spent all day cooking Christmas dinner while she texted on her phone? Better than someone who owns his house outright and runs a successful business? Better than a guy who's never once asked her to contribute financially to anything because he actually can provide for his family? I'm warming up now because this is where years of biting my tongue finally pay off. Or do you mean better than someone who's actually legally married to her and has no intention of going anywhere? Dave clears his throat, and when he speaks his voice has lost about 90% of its earlier confidence. I think there might be some confusion here, he says, which is like saying the Titanic had some minor navigation issues. I was told that Sarah was that the situation was. He trails off, probably realizing that finishing that sentence means admitting he knowingly came to hit on someone else's wife. The situation is exactly what it looks like, I tell him. And I actually feel a little bad for the guy. Not bad enough to let him off the hook, but bad enough to give him an out. You walked into a marriage that's having some communication issues. Sarah's family seems to think she's available for upgrades, but legally speaking, she's still very much taken. I pause, watching him process this information. Now, you seem like a smart guy, Dave. Smart enough to recognize when you've accidentally stepped into someone else's mess. The beautiful thing about this whole situation is watching everyone's carefully constructed fantasy crumble in real time. They had it all figured out: get rid of the inconvenient husband, bring in the upgrade, and live happily ever after with someone who fits their idea of what Sarah deserves. Except they forgot one tiny detail. I'm not going anywhere, and I've got the paperwork to prove it. This dinner is turning into the world's most uncomfortable marathon, and I'm starting to think we should hand out participation trophies just for everyone managing to stay seated through the show. The turkey's getting cold, the wine's flowing like water at a Baptist wedding, and the tension in this room is thick enough to cut with a knife, which coincidentally might be a better use for the carving knife at this point than actually carving anything. Richard, bless his delusional little heart, decides that the solution to this awkward situation is to double down on his Dave sales pitch like he's trying to move a used car with a sketchy transmission. He starts going on about Dave's career trajectory, his family connections, his goddamn golf handicap, because apparently that's what makes a man worthy of stealing someone else's wife. Dave comes from excellent stock. Richard announces like we're breeding Rache horses instead of talking about human beings. His father owns 3 car dealerships and his mother sits on the board of the country club. Holy stop the presses, everyone. Dave's mom is on a country club board. Alert the media. Call the Pope. This changes everything. I mean, nothing says perfect husband material like having a mother who argues about tennis court maintenance and whether the club should allow colored socks with golf shoes. Real impressive credentials there, Richard. I'm sure that'll be super helpful when Dave's trying to figure out how to afford a divorce lawyer. Eleanor jumps back into the conversation like she's been shot out of a cannon, making these snide little comments about my small-time investments with this tone that suggests she thinks I'm running a lemonade stand instead of an actual business. Of course, Marcus does well enough for himself, she says in that patronizing way that makes you want to check if she's patting your head while she's talking. Though it must be difficult competing with real professionals in today's market. Real professionals. Lady, I've been running my own company since before your daughter figured out how to use an ATM without calling for help. My small-time investments have tripled in value over the last 5 years. While Richard's been playing golf and pretending that middle management at some corporate bureaucracy makes him a business genius. But sure, let's talk about professionals. Actually, Eleanor, I say, cutting into my turkey with surgical precision since we're talking about investments and professional success. It's kind of funny you should mention that. I pause, savoring both the perfectly seasoned meat and the moment of anticipation I'm creating. My little company hit a pretty significant milestone this year. Tripled in value, actually. Sometimes small-time investments work out better than the big flashy ones. You know, the look on her face is like watching someone realize they've been bragging about their Toyota while standing next to a Ferrari. Richard's mouth opens and closes like a fish that's just been pulled out of water. Probably trying to do the math on exactly how much money his small-time son-in-law is actually worth. Dave's looking more and more like he's wondering if he accidentally walked into the wrong house and crashed the wrong family's dinner. But here's where I really start enjoying myself because I've been saving the best part for last. Oh, and Sarah, I say, turning to my dear wife who's been sitting there looking like she's trying to become invisible through sheer force of will. Remember that rent arrangement we set up? You know, the one where you insisted on paying rent because you wanted to maintain your independence and not feel like you were freeloading? Sarah's wine glass stops halfway to her lips like she's suddenly forgotten how drinking works. The color drains from her face faster than water going down a drain. And I swear I can actually see her brain trying to figure out where I'm going with this and how badly it's going to hurt when I get there. Yeah, that was really admirable of you, honey. I continue because there's nothing more beautiful than truth delivered with a smile. Very principled, very modern. Making sure you contributed financially to the household even though you were living in a house that was already paid off. I take another bite of stuffing, chewing thoughtfully while everyone waits for the other shoe to drop. I've got all those bank transfers, by the way, every month like clockwork. Really shows commitment to your principles. Richard's face is doing this interesting thing where it's cycling through different shades of red like a mood ring having an identity crisis. Rent. He sputters because apparently the idea that his princess daughter has been paying to live in her own home is more shocking than the fact that she's been planning to dump her husband for a newer model. Sarah, what is he talking about? Well, I explain helpfully because I'm nothing if not educational. Sarah felt it was important to maintain her financial independence within our marriage. Very empowering, really. She didn't want to feel like she was taking advantage of my hospitality. The word hospitality hangs in the air like a bad smell because that's exactly what this arrangement turned out to be. Me providing hospitality to someone who was apparently just passing through. Dave's starting to look like he's done the math and realized that this secure future he thought he was stepping into comes with some interesting complications. The guy's sharp enough to understand that a woman who's been paying rent to live in her husband's house probably doesn't have the kind of assets that would make a messy divorce worth the hassle. His nervous half-smile is getting more nervous and less smile by the minute. Olivia, because she's never met a moment she couldn't make worse, decides to pipe up with her trademark blend of ignorance and attitude. That's just paperwork, Marcus, she says, waving her hand like she's dismissing a particularly annoying fly. These things can be worked out between reasonable people. Paperwork, I repeat, nodding like she's just shared something profound, right? Just paperwork. Like the Constitution, I guess, like marriage licenses, like birth certificates, just paperwork. I'm really enjoying this now because watching people realize they've severely underestimated the situation is like watching a train wreck in slow motion, except the train is full of and I'm safely standing on the platform with popcorn. The thing about really good paperwork, Olivia, I continue, is that it's designed by people who understand that families like yours exist. People who know that sometimes marriage isn't not because of incompatibility or growing apart, but because one party decides they'd rather trade up for someone with better connections and a newer model personality. I glance over at Dave, who's looking more and more like he's regretting every decision that led him to this dining room. No offense, Dave. I'm sure you're a lovely guy. You're just a lovely guy who walked into someone else's chess game thinking it was checkers. Sarah finally finds her voice, though it comes out sounding like she's been gargling with gravel. Marcus, this isn't what you think it is, she tries, but her voice lacks conviction like a politician's campaign promise. Dave is we're just friends. Family friends, I echo, because apparently we're going to keep pretending that's what this is. The kind of family friends who get introduced as perfect husband material at Christmas dinner. The kind of friendship where your father talks about grandchildren and secure futures. I look around the table taking in all the uncomfortable faces like I'm an art critic examining a particularly fascinating train wreck. Must be nice to have friends like that. Sarah really supportive. The beautiful thing about truth is that it doesn't need to be loud or angry to be devastating. It just needs to be accurate and well-timed like a precision strike that hits exactly where it's supposed to hit. I've been sitting on this information for months, watching this whole elaborate plan unfold, waiting for exactly this moment when they'd all be gathered together, thinking they were so clever, so sophisticated, so much smarter than the poor dumb husband who couldn't possibly have figured out what was going on right under his nose. Dave clears his throat again. And I'm starting to think the guy might have developed some kind of nervous condition. Perhaps I should go, he says, which shows he's got more sense than the rest of them combined. This seems like a family matter. Oh no, Dave, I say quickly, because I'm not done with this show yet. You're part of the family matter now. Richard specifically brought you here to be part of Sarah's future, right? Can't have a future without understanding the present. I gesture around the room like I'm a tour guide showing off historical landmarks. Welcome to the present, buddy. Hope you brought comfortable shoes because it's going to be a long walk. You know what they say about keeping your friends close and your enemies closer? Well, turns out when your wife becomes your enemy, she gets real careless about covering her tracks. I'm talking sloppy amateur hour. Did you even try to hide this levels of careless? It's almost insulting. Really? Like she thought I was so checked out of our marriage that I wouldn't notice her building an entire secret life right under my nose. Sorry to disappoint you, sweetheart, but I've been paying attention to everything, and what I found is more entertaining than a reality TV show and twice as pathetic. I lean back in my chair, getting comfortable, because this is where things get really interesting. The turkey's officially cold now, but who gives a about dinner when you're about to serve up the main course of truth with a side of, oh, we're screwed. I take a slow sip of wine, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone squirm like they're sitting on thumbtacks. Since we're all being so honest and open about Sarah's future, I begin, my voice calm as a lake on a windless day. I figured this might be a good time to share some interesting discoveries I've made recently. I pause, watching Sarah's face cycle through more emotions than a soap opera actress having a breakdown. See, the funny thing about being married to someone for 15 years is that you tend to notice when their routine changes. Little things, new habits, different schedules, mysterious phone calls. Sarah's hand is gripping her wine glass so tight, I'm genuinely concerned she might shatter it and need medical attention. Marcus, what are you talking about? She asks, but her voice has that high-pitched quality that screams guilty as charged and desperately hoping no one notices. Well, for starters, I say cutting another piece of turkey with deliberate precision. There's that new bank account you opened 3 months ago. The one at First National. The bank where you definitely don't do any other banking, which makes it a real interesting choice for your what did you call it when you thought I wasn't listening. Your emergency fund. The silence that follows could power a small city. Sarah's mouth opens and closes like she's trying to catch flies. While Eleanor and Richard exchange the kind of look that says they're realizing their daughter is about as subtle as a marching band. Dave's looking around the room like he's trying to figure out if there's a hidden camera somewhere. And this is all some elaborate prank. Now, I didn't go snooping. I continue because honesty is important even when you're destroying someone's life. Sarah left her laptop open on the kitchen counter last Tuesday morning. You know how it is when you're rushing out to meet friends. I let that word hang in the air like a bad fart. And there it was, right on the screen. Online banking, brand new account with some very interesting deposit patterns. Richard's starting to look like he's going to stroke out, which would actually improve the dinner conversation significantly. What deposits? He demands because apparently he's finally catching on that his precious daughter might not be the innocent victim they've all been treating her like. Oh, just the usual stuff, I say casually, like we're discussing grocery shopping instead of financial fraud. Transfers from her regular account. Small amounts, nothing too obvious, very careful, very methodical. The kind of thing someone does when they're planning ahead for a big life change. I take another sip of wine, savoring both the vintage and the moment. Real smart, actually. If you're going to plan a divorce, might as well make sure you've got some cash stashed away first. But here's where it gets really fun, because that secret bank account is just the appetizer. The main course is those hotel charges I mentioned. And boy oh boy, are they a doozy. Speaking of interesting patterns, I continue. There are these hotel charges that keep showing up on your father's corporate card, Richard. The Ritz-Carlton specifically every Tuesday afternoon for the past 2 months. Richard's face goes from purple to gray so fast I'm worried he might actually keel over right into the mashed potatoes. What hotel charges? He croaks like he's suddenly developed laryngitis or forgotten how to use his vocal cords properly. Tuesday afternoons, I repeat helpfully because I want to make sure everyone understands the timeline here. Very consistent, very reliable, like clockwork, really. I turn to Dave, whose nervous half-smile has completely disappeared and been replaced by the expression of a man who's just realized he's been played harder than a rigged carnival game. Dave, buddy, you wouldn't happen to remember where you were on Tuesday afternoons for the past couple months, would you? The poor bastard looks like he's been hit by a truck carrying a load of reality checks. His eyes dart to Sarah, who's gone so pale she looks like she might need emergency medical attention. Then back to me, then to Richard, who's staring at his daughter like he's seeing her for the first time and doesn't like what he's looking at. I think, Dave says slowly, and you can practically hear the gears grinding in his head as he processes the full scope of what he's walked into. There might have been some miscommunication about the nature of the situation here. Oh, there's been plenty of communication, I assure him, because I'm nothing if not helpful. Just not the kind that involves honesty or respect or basic human decency. I reach into my jacket pocket and pull out my phone, holding it up like I'm about to take a selfie with the world's most dysfunctional family. See, the thing about modern technology is that it makes everything so convenient. Like recording conversations, for instance, the temperature in the room drops about 40 degrees and I swear I can hear Eleanor's jewelry rattling from how hard she's shaking. Recording. She whispers like I just told her I've been keeping body parts in the freezer. 6 months worth. I confirm cheerfully because there's nothing like being thorough when you're documenting your own marriage falling apart. You'd be amazed what people say when they think they're having private conversations. Really enlightening stuff. Very educational. I scroll through my phone like I'm checking my email instead of holding evidence that could blow up their entire world. Amazing sound quality these days. Crystal clear. Really. You can hear every word, every plan, every little detail about how you were going to handle the Marcus problem. Sarah finally finds her voice, though it sounds like it's been put through a blender. You recorded us? She asks like, I'm the one who's been behaving badly here. That's illegal. Actually, sweetheart, I correct her gently because education is important in this state as long as one party consents to the recording. And since I was usually one of the parties in these conversations, that would be me. It's perfectly legal. Amazing what you learn when you actually read the law instead of just assuming you know how it works. Dave's face has gone through more changes than a traffic light during rush hour. The guy's obviously smart enough to understand that he's not just walked into a messy marriage. He's walked into an evidence locker. All those Tuesday afternoon business meetings at the Ritz. All those careful conversations about Sarah's future. All those plans about how to handle the inconvenient husband who owned everything they wanted, all recorded, all documented, all ready to be played back in crystal clear digital audio for anyone who wants to hear exactly how this whole thing was planned from the beginning. Now, I continue because I'm really hitting my stride here. I want everyone to understand that I'm not angry about this. I'm actually kind of impressed by the coordination involved. Getting Dave lined up as a replacement, figuring out the timing, making sure everyone was on board with the plan. It shows real organizational skills, the kind of project management abilities that could probably land someone a job in corporate planning if they weren't too busy planning to over their husband. Eleanor tries to recover, putting on that imperious tone she uses when she wants to sound like the voice of moral authority. This is outrageous, Marcus. How dare you spy on your own family? Spy? I laugh, and it's a genuine laugh because that's actually funny. Eleanor, honey, they were having these conversations in my house, at my dinner table, in my living room. Sarah was taking calls in the kitchen while I was making breakfast. Olivia was giving advice in the guest room while I was fixing the broken lamp upstairs. I spread my hands like I'm explaining something to a particularly slow kindergartner. That's not spying. That's just having ears and a functioning brain. The best part about all of this is watching their carefully constructed reality crumble in real time. They thought they were so clever, so sophisticated, so much smarter than the poor dumb husband who couldn't possibly figure out what was happening right under his nose. They made plans, they set timelines, they brought in the replacement, and they did it all while assuming I was too stupid, too trusting, or too checked out to notice. Wrong on all three counts, folks. I've been documenting this whole thing like a scientist studying a particularly interesting species of parasitic behavior. Every conversation, every plan, every snide comment about how they were going to handle me once Sarah was free to pursue her real happiness with someone more suitable. Dave's looking at Sarah now with the expression of a man who's just realized he's been recruited for a job that comes with way more baggage than advertised. For years, and I mean years, Richard has been the self-appointed king of this up little dynasty, strutting around like he's running General Motors instead of pushing papers at some mid-tier corporate hellscape that peaked during the Clinton administration. The man's got an ego the size of Texas and twice as inflated. Always talking down to me like I'm some kind of charity case who got lucky enough to marry into his prestigious family. Eleanor's been the puppet master pulling strings from behind the scenes. But Richard's been the face of their operation, the one who delivers the verbal beatdowns and the condescending lectures about how I should be grateful for the privilege of being related to them by marriage. But here's the thing about bullies and tyrants. They're only scary until someone calls their bluff. And right now, watching Richard's face cycle through emotions like a slot machine hitting jackpot, I'm realizing that all these years of intimidation tactics were just smoke and mirrors from a man who's about as powerful as a wet paper bag in a hurricane. What? He barks at Sarah and his voice cracks like a 13-year-old boy asking someone to prom. For the first time since I've known this pompous, he sounds genuinely rattled, like someone just told him his stock portfolio evaporated and his golf membership got revoked on the same day. What is he talking about, Sarah? Sarah's sitting there looking like a deer caught in headlights. If the deer was also guilty of embezzlement and really bad at covering its tracks, she opens her mouth, closes it, opens it again. She's doing this fish out of water routine that would be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Dad, I can explain. She starts, but her voice is all the conviction of a politician promising to lower taxes. Those hotel charges, I continue helpfully because I'm nothing if not educational at the Ritz-Carlton Tuesday afternoons like clockwork. Always charged to your corporate card, Richard. Always the same room rate. Always the same time slot. I'm really enjoying this now. Watching the dominoes fall in slow motion. Must be some pretty important business meetings to justify the presidential suite every week. Richard's face goes from red to purple to a shade of gray that suggests his cardiovascular system might be filing a formal complaint. The man looks like he's trying to do advanced calculus while someone's hitting him with a baseball bat, processing information that's apparently rewriting everything he thought he knew about his precious daughter's activities. Presidential suite, he repeats, and his voice sounds like it's coming from somewhere deep underground. Sarah, what the hell is he talking about? Dave's backing toward the door now, like the house is on fire, and he's suddenly remembered he left the stove on at home. Smart man. The guy's probably calculating the fastest route to his car and wondering if he can make it to the driveway before this whole situation explodes into something that might require witness protection. Well, I explain, pulling out my phone and scrolling through what I like to call my evidence collection. Those Tuesday afternoon reservations weren't for business meetings. Richard, unless Dave here has started a new consulting firm that specializes in, what would you call it, Sarah? Interior decorating, relationship counseling. I look up from my phone with a kind of innocent expression that fools absolutely nobody. Or maybe it was market research. Yeah, that sounds professional. Eleanor tries to jump in with some damage control because she spent so many years managing the family's image that she probably thinks she can spin this into something wholesome. Now, Marcus, there's probably a perfectly reasonable explanation for all of this, she says, using that voice she reserves for when she's trying to convince people that black is actually white and up is really down. Oh, there's definitely an explanation. I agree. Nodding like she's just said something brilliant. See, I had a really interesting conversation with a compliance officer at Richard's firm last week. Lovely woman, very thorough, very interested in corporate expense policies and how they're supposed to work. The blood drains from Richard's face so fast I'm worried he might need a transfusion. Turns out they take a pretty dim view of personal expenses being charged to company accounts. Who knew? The beautiful thing about Richard is that he spent so many years being the big shot, the intimidator, the guy who makes everyone else feel small. That he's never developed any kind of defense against someone who actually fights back. He's like a boxer who's only ever sparred with punching bags, suddenly finding himself in the ring with someone who hits back twice as hard. You did what? He roars. And for a second, I think he might actually launch himself across the table like some kind of demented holiday missile. You call my office. You spoke to compliance. Well, Richard, I say, spreading my hands like I'm the most reasonable person in the world. I was concerned about potential fraud. You know, misuse of corporate funds, falsifying expense reports, that kind of thing. Just being a good citizen, really, looking out for the integrity of American business. I take another bite of turkey, chewing thoughtfully while he processes the full implications of what I've just told him. They were very grateful for the information, said they've been looking into some irregularities in your expense reports. Anyway, Dave's practically pressed against the wall now, looking like he's trying to melt into the wallpaper. The poor guy came here thinking he was going to have a nice dinner and maybe get a phone number, and instead he's gotten a front row seat to white-collar crime confession hour. He's probably wondering if there's some kind of statute of limitations on being an accessory to whatever the hell this family has been up to. Sarah finally explodes because apparently bottling up guilt and panic can only last so long before the whole thing blows like a shaken soda can. That's private. She shrieks like privacy is some kind of magic word that makes adultery and financial manipulation disappear. You had no right to go through my things. Your things? I repeat, because this is getting better by the minute. Honey, those hotel bills weren't your things. They were your father's corporate expenses. Public record technically once they become part of an investigation. I leaned forward getting serious for a moment because this next part is important. And I didn't go through anything. You left your laptop open on the kitchen counter with your banking app logged in. That's not snooping. That's you being careless as hell. The table erupts like Mount Vesuvius having a bad day. Eleanor's shrieking about invasion of privacy. Sarah's crying about trust and betrayal, which is rich coming from someone who's been planning to trade me in for a newer model. And Olivia is doing her usual routine of making everything worse by adding her own brand of helpful commentary. But Richard's gone completely silent, staring at his daughter like he's seeing her for the first time and realizing she's not the person he thought she was. The man who spent years acting like he's the smartest guy in every room is finally doing the math and understanding that his daughter's stupidity might have just torpedoed his entire career. Jesus Christ, Sarah, he finally whispers. And his voice sounds like it's coming from the bottom of a very deep well. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you understand what this means? It means, I say helpfully, because I'm all about education, that those Tuesday afternoon business meetings are about to become very interesting reading for some federal investigators who specialize in corporate fraud. It means your expense account is going to get more scrutiny than a presidential candidate's tax returns. And it means Dave here probably wants to be anywhere else on earth right about now. Dave nods so vigorously, I'm worried his head might fall off. I should definitely go, he says, edging toward the door like the house is full of poisonous gas. This is clearly a family matter that needs to be resolved privately. Oh no, Dave, I say, because I'm not quite done with this performance yet. You're part of the family matter now. Richard specifically recruited you to be Sarah's post-divorce upgrade. Remember? Can't back out now just because the job description turned out to be a little more complicated than advertised. The thing about truth is that it's like a virus. Once it gets loose, it spreads everywhere, infecting every lie and half-truth until the whole construction collapses under its own weight. They thought they had everything figured out. Thought they could orchestrate my exit from Sarah's life, like some kind of corporate restructuring, where the inconvenient husband gets downsized and replaced with someone more suitable to their social aspirations. Instead, they've created a situation where Richard's career might be over. Sarah's future is looking significantly less secure than they planned, and Dave's wondering if he can somehow travel back in time and unaccept this dinner invitation. Eleanor completely loses her mind. And I mean completely. She starts screaming about legacy like she's some kind of deposed European royalty instead of a middle-class woman from Ohio whose biggest claim to fame is organizing charity events where other people donate money so she can take credit for being philanthropic. This family has a reputation. She shrieks, gesturing wildly like she's conducting an orchestra of invisible violins. We have standing in this community. We have a legacy to protect. Legacy, Jesus Christ. The woman talks about legacy like they're the Kennedys or the Rockefellers instead of a family whose greatest achievement is Richard managing not to get fired from his middle management position for the past 20 years. What legacy exactly? The legacy of looking down on people who actually work for a living. The legacy of manipulating situations to get what they want regardless of who gets hurt. The legacy of raising a daughter who thinks marriage is just a practice round before she finds someone better. What legacy? I ask, genuinely curious, because I'd love to hear her explain exactly what noble family tradition I'm supposedly destroying by pointing out that her daughter's a cheating fraud and her husband's a corporate criminal. The legacy of entitlement, the legacy of thinking rules don't apply to you, or are we talking about the legacy of spending other people's money while pretending you earned it? Sarah's crying now. Real tears streaming down her face like someone just told her that designer handbags cause cancer. And Starbucks is closing forever. I deserve more respect than this, she wails, which is absolutely hilarious coming from someone who's been lying to my face for months while planning my replacement behind my back. I deserve a man who appreciates me. Appreciates her. That's rich. I've been appreciating her lying ass for 15 years, cooking her dinner, paying for her lifestyle, listening to her complain about everything from the weather to the way I breathe while sleeping. I've appreciated her so much that I let her turn our marriage into a hotel where she gets to live rentrée while treating me like the help. But apparently appreciation means something different in Sarah's dictionary. Probably involves being wealthy enough to not notice when she's robbing you blind. Olivia, because she's never met a bad situation she couldn't make worse, decides this is her moment to really shine. She jumps in with both feet like she's diving into a pool of toxic waste. Pointing her finger at me like I'm the villain in this little soap opera. You're ungrateful, Marcus, she declares, putting on that righteous indignation act that she's perfected over years of being a professional victim. After everything this family has done for you, everything they've done for me. I have to laugh at that one. A real belly laugh that probably sounds a little unhinged, but feels absolutely fantastic. Everything you've done for me, I repeat, wiping my eyes because that's genuinely funny. Like what exactly? Treating me like hired help at family gatherings? Making snide comments about my work? Constantly suggesting that Sarah could do better? Or are you talking about the more recent stuff like planning my divorce without bothering to tell me about it? Dave's edging toward the door like the house is about to explode, which let's be honest, it kind of is. The guy keeps muttering about not knowing what he'd stepped into, which shows he's got more sense than the rest of them combined. I had no idea. He keeps saying like he's trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. Nobody told me. I wouldn't have. This is not what I signed up for. Smart man. Get out while you can, Dave. This ship isn't just sinking. It's being torpedoed from the inside by people too stupid to realize they're below the water line. Let him run. I say, not even trying to stop Dave as he fumbles for the door handle like it's the escape hatch on a crashing airplane. This isn't his battle anyway. Poor guy thought he was getting recruited for a simple husband replacement job. Nobody told him it came with potential federal charges and a front row seat to a family meltdown. Richard's finally starting to understand the full scope of what his precious daughter has done to his life. The man sitting there staring at Sarah like she just told him she's been selling state secrets to foreign governments for fun and profit. Sarah, he says, and his voice sounds like it's coming from the bottom of a very deep, very dark hole. Do you understand what you've done to me? To my career, to everything I've worked for? I was thinking about my future. Sarah screams back because apparently destroying other people's lives is totally justified if you frame it as self-improvement. About what I deserve, about being happy. Happy? I'm used cutting another piece of turkey that's now officially colder than Richard's chances of keeping his job. That's interesting, Sarah. Were you happy when you were signing that prenup? Were you happy when you insisted on paying rent to maintain your independence? Were you happy when you were opening secret bank accounts and planning my replacement? I pause, savoring both the moment and the perfectly seasoned meat that's going to waste while we have this lovely family discussion. Or were you only unhappy after you realized that divorcing me wasn't going to come with a financial windfall you'd been counting on? Eleanor is still going on about family reputation and community standing, but her voice is getting higher and more desperate like a smoke alarm running out of batteries. People will talk. They'll say terrible things about us. Our name will be ruined. Your name? I say, and I can't keep the amusement out of my voice because this is actually hilarious. Is about to be associated with corporate fraud and adultery. I'm pretty sure the reputation ship has already sailed. Ella Laner probably hit an iceberg and sank somewhere around the time your daughter started around on company time using daddy's credit card. That's when I set my fork down because this next part requires my full attention and I want to make sure everyone understands exactly what's happening here. You know what the really beautiful part of this whole thing is? I ask, looking around the table at these people who thought they were so smart, so sophisticated, so much better than the guy they were planning to discard like yesterday's newspaper. For years, you've all treated me like I was some kind of temporary inconvenience in Sarah's life. Like I was the practice husband, the starter marriage, the guy she settled for until something better came along. You made jokes about my work, my background, my family. You acted like I should be grateful for the privilege of being tolerated by your superior bloodline. I'm warming up now because this is years of suppressed frustration finally getting its moment in the spotlight. But here's the thing that's really funny. I continue and I can see Dave still hovering by the door like he's watching a car accident and can't look away. Your legacy, this reputation you're so worried about protecting, this family standing that supposedly means so much. It's all built on lies and weakness. Richard's mouth opens and closes like he's trying to argue. But what's he going to say? That he didn't know his corporate credit card was being used to fund his daughter's affair? That he had no idea his family was planning to commit fraud to get rid of an inconvenient son-in-law? That he's been talking about my financial situation while his own daughter was stealing from his company to pay for hotel rooms? You want to know about legacy, Eleanor? I ask, turning to the woman who's been acting like the queen mother of a dynasty that exists only in her own mind. Your legacy is that you raised a daughter who thinks marriage is just a temporary arrangement until she finds someone richer. Your legacy is a son-in-law who's about to lose his job because his family thinks corporate credit cards are their personal piggy bank. Your legacy is bringing a complete stranger to Christmas dinner to replace a family member like he's a broken appliance you can just swap out. The silence that follows is the kind you get right before everything goes to hell. It's the calm before the storm. The moment when everyone realizes that the situation has gone way beyond awkward family dinner and crossed into territory that might require lawyers, therapists, and possibly a really good crisis management firm. Sarah's sobbing now. Real ugly crying that's smearing her makeup and making her look like a raccoon who's been caught raiding garbage cans. This isn't how it was supposed to go. She wails like she had some kind of master plan that involved me gracefully stepping aside so she could upgrade to Dave without any messy complications. How was it supposed to go exactly? I ask. Because I'm genuinely curious about the fantasy scenario they'd constructed. Was I supposed to just disappear, sign over the house, hand over my business? Maybe throw in a blessing for your new relationship while I'm at it. Olivia is still trying to salvage something from this disaster because she's apparently never learned when to cut her losses and run. You're being cruel, Marcus, she says like cruelty is pointing out that her sisters are lying, cheating fraud instead of enabling the whole up situation. This is Christmas. This is supposed to be about family and forgiveness. You're absolutely right, Olivia. I agree. Raising my wine glass in another mock toast. This is about family. And what I've learned about this family tonight is that you're all a bunch of lying, manipulative, entitled who think you can treat people like disposable objects when they're no longer useful to your plans. You know what? I'm done. Done with this dinner. Done with this family. Done with pretending that any of this is worth salvaging. I push back from the table and stand up, feeling lighter than I have in months, like someone just removed a 50 pounds weight from my shoulders that I didn't even realize I'd been carrying around. I walk over to the coat closet and grab my jacket, taking my time, because there's something beautifully final about this moment. Sarah jumps up like the house is on fire, suddenly very interested in having a conversation now that I'm obviously checking out of the show. Marcus, wait. She calls, her voice all desperate and panicky. Please, can we just sit down and discuss this privately? Like adults. Privately. Like adults. That's hilarious coming from someone who just spent Christmas dinner getting her replacement introduced to the family while her husband carved the turkey. Nah, Sarah, I say, shrugging into my coat like I'm getting ready for a pleasant evening stroll instead of walking out of my marriage. I think we're way past the private discussion phase. That ship sailed around the time you started charging hotel rooms to your dad's corporate card. Eleanor is having what I can only describe as a complete meltdown, pointing at me like I'm some kind of war criminal instead of a guy who's finally had enough of being treated like garbage in his own house. You can't just walk away. She shrieks because apparently leaving a toxic situation is somehow morally wrong when it inconveniences her plans. That's what cowards do. Real men fight for their marriages. Real men, I repeat, because that's rich coming from someone whose idea of fighting for marriage apparently involves recruiting my replacement and planning my financial destruction. You're right, Eleanor. Real men do fight for their marriages. They also know when to stop fighting for something that's already dead. But here's where things get interesting, because Richard does something completely unexpected. He gets up and follows me to the door. Not to argue, not to threaten, not to try one more manipulation tactic, but just follows. The guy who spent years treating me like an unwelcome guest in his daughter's life suddenly looks older than his years, tired in a way that goes deeper than just physical exhaustion. "Marcus," he says quietly, and his voice is different now. Not the pompous, condescending tone he usually reserves for me, but something almost human. "Wait a minute." I turn around, curious despite myself, because this is the first time in 15 years that Richard has spoken to me like I'm an actual person instead of an inconvenient obstacle to his family's happiness. "I owe you an apology," he says. And I almost fall over because Richard apologizing is like watching a unicorn do tax preparation. Theoretically possible, but highly unlikely. This isn't how I raised her to behave. For a moment, just a moment, I see something in his eyes that might actually be genuine regret. Not regret about getting caught. Not regret about the consequences, but actual remorse for what his family has put me through. "The beach house," he continues, his voice is so quiet, I have to strain to hear him over Eleanor's continued hysteria in the background. The one Eleanor's always bragging about, the one she acts like she owns. "It's in my name, only my name." He reaches into his wallet and pulls out a set of keys, holding them out like he's offering me the crown jewels. "If you need somewhere to go, somewhere to think, it's yours. As long as you need it." I stare at the keys. Because this is not how I expected this conversation to go. "Why?" I ask. Because I genuinely don't understand what angle he's working here. Richard looks back toward the dining room where his wife is still ranting about family honor and his daughters are probably plotting their next move because he says, meeting my eyes for maybe the first time ever, "I respect you more than I respect my own daughter, and that's something I'm going to have to live with." Wholly in 15 years of marriage, Richard has never once given me a compliment. Never once treated me like an equal. Never once acknowledged that I might be worth more than the dirt on his shoes. And now here in the hallway, while his family implodes in the dining room, he's telling me he respects me more than his own child. The keys are warm in my hand, solid and real in a way that nothing else about this evening has been. "Richard," I say, because this moment deserves some kind of acknowledgement. "This doesn't change anything between us. You know that, right?" He nods, looking older than I've ever seen him look. "I know, but it's something I needed to say anyway." He glances back toward the chaos we've left behind, then back at me. "For what it's worth, Marcus, you deserve better than what we gave you. What she gave you." And with that, Richard walks back toward the dining room, leaving me standing in the hallway holding the keys to a beach house and wondering if this is what closure feels like or if I'm just having some kind of stress-induced hallucination brought on by too much family dysfunction and not enough alcohol. From the dining room, I can hear Eleanor still carrying on about reputation and community standing. Sarah still crying about how unfair everything is. And Olivia still trying to make herself the center of attention even while everything falls apart around her. But for the first time all evening, I'm not part of that chaos anymore. I'm standing in my own hallway, in my own house, holding keys to a beach house that apparently belongs to me now, and feeling something I haven't felt in years. Peace, not happiness exactly, but the kind of calm that comes when you finally stop trying to fix something that was broken from the beginning and accept that some things are meant to end. The front door is right there, waiting for me like an old friend. All I have to do is turn the handle and walk through it. And this whole chapter of my life becomes history. No more family dinners where I'm the unwanted guest. No more holidays spent cooking for people who think I'm beneath them. No more pretending that a marriage built on lies and manipulation is worth saving just because we've invested 15 years in the illusion. I take one last look back toward the dining room where my soon-to-be ex-wife and her family are probably already planning their next move, figuring out how to minimize the damage and spin this whole thing into something that makes them look like the victims. The cold night air hits me like a slap in the face. But it's the good kind of slap. The kind that wakes you up and makes you realize you've been holding your breath for way too long. I stand on my own front porch for a minute, looking back at this house that's been both my sanctuary and my prison for the past 15 years, and I feel something I haven't felt in forever. Free. My phone starts buzzing like an angry hornet. And I don't even have to look to know it's Sarah, Eleanor, probably Olivia, too. A whole chorus of damage control and desperate manipulation disguised as hurt feelings and righteous indignation. Delete, delete, delete. Amazing how satisfying it is to watch those messages disappear into digital oblivion where they belong instead of dealing with their I call Andrew, my lawyer. Yeah, it's Christmas Day. Yeah, he's probably sitting around his own dinner table with his own family. Hopefully one that doesn't require a team of federal investigators to sort out their holiday plans. But Andrew's been preparing for this call for months. Ever since I first started documenting Sarah's extracurricular activities and her family's delusions of grandeur. "Merry Christmas, Andrew," I say when he picks up. And I can hear kids laughing in the background. The sound of a normal family having a normal holiday. "Hope you're having a better evening than I am, Marcus." He sounds surprised but not shocked. We've been planning this conversation for a while now. "Everything okay?" "Actually, everything's perfect." I tell him, And I mean it. I want to file the papers first thing Monday morning. All of them. Divorce, fraud report, the whole package we discussed. There's a pause. Then Andrew's voice comes back. All business. You sure about this? No going back once we start. Never been more sure of anything in my life. I say, climbing into my car and starting the engine. As I pull out of the driveway, Bing Crosby comes on the radio singing about dreaming of a white Christmas. And I turn it up loud enough to drown out any second thoughts I might have had. This isn't loss. This is liberation. The house is mine. My business is secure. And my future just became a hell of a lot brighter without Sarah's family dragging me down like anchors on a sinking ship. I drive away from that house, from that dinner, from that marriage. And for the first time in years, I'm actually looking forward to tomorrow. Freedom tastes better than any Christmas dinner ever could. By the time I pull into my driveway at my house that belongs to me and only me, I feel like I've just finished running a marathon and discovered I actually won the damn thing. The house is quiet, peaceful mind. No more Eleanor screeching about reputation. No more Richard acting like he's doing me favors by existing. No more Sarah treating our marriage like a stepping stone to something better. I pour myself 3 fingers of the good scotch, the 18-year-old Macallan I've been saving for a special occasion. Turns out the death of a shitty marriage is pretty special after all. I raise the glass to the empty room, to the silence, to the beautiful absence of people who've spent years making me feel like a stranger in my own life. Merry Christmas, Marcus. I say out loud. Because sometimes you've got to be your own cheerleader. Merry Christmas, freedom. The scotch burns just right. Going down, warm and smooth and expensive as hell. Richard's family can keep their delusions, their legacy, their carefully orchestrated replacement plans. Sarah can cling to Dave if the poor bastard's stupid enough to stick around after tonight's performance. Olivia can keep being a professional victim and Eleanor can drown in her need to control everything that moves. But me, I've got something better than all their schemes and manipulations combined. Independence. Real independence. Not the fake kind Sarah was always talking about while living in my house and spending my money. The kind of independence that comes with owning your own life, making your own choices, and not having to pretend that toxic people are worth keeping around just because you share DNA or wedding vows. This isn't the end of my story. It's the beginning. The beginning of mornings without passive-aggressive comments over coffee. The beginning of holidays that don't require a team of therapists to process. The beginning of a life where I don't have to constantly prove my worth to people who were never worthy of my time in the first place. I settle into my favorite chair, the one Sarah always complained was too comfortable and made the living room look too masculine. And I realized something that makes me smile for the first time all day. This wasn't the worst Christmas dinner ever. This was the best Christmas gift I've ever given myself. The gift of walking away. The gift of choosing myself over their dysfunction. The gift of finally understanding that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is stop fighting for people who are never fighting for you. Merry Christmas to me.